Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our personal preparedness webinar this afternoon. We are excited to have Jenny, who is one of our emergency preparedness specialists here at the health department, do the presentation today. So you guys, it is a really great presentation. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the chat feature box, which is on the left-hand side of your screen. We will try to answer all those questions at the end. We'll also take questions at the end of the webinar, so if you're on the phone, you'll be able to ask those questions directly. Otherwise, you can utilize the chat box. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny.
Hi, everyone. She said my name is Jenny. I'm with the Emergency Preparedness Department here at Hamilton County Public Health. We are a division or department of 2, so we're fairly small. But I'm excited to be here today to go over personal preparedness with you guys. And like she said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I love questions. It makes me explain things a lot better. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So a big concept across the board for most preparedness agencies is this rule of 3, where for personal preparedness, what you really want to do is build a kit or get a kit, make a plan, and be informed. So today the focus is really on building a kit and making a plan, and really those two aspects help you be informed. So that's kind of how they all tie in together. And a lot of this information can actually be found on ready.gov. It's a great website for preparedness people, and if you're interested, if your families are interested, your neighbors or your kids, it's a great site to kind of go explore and get lost in for a while because they have tons of stuff on there. So the basics of building a kit, really the idea behind a kit is that if an emergency happens, you don't want to be scrambling to get all of your supplies together while also trying to deal with the emergency at hand. And let's say you have a flooding issue going on, you may not get reached by emergency personnel for up to 72 hours in some cases. So you really want to be able to be prepared to be self-sustaining for those 72 hours. And it can be a disaster of all sorts. Really having those materials in place before something happens is the key here. And really, a lot of this stuff might actually be in your home already. Maybe you just haven't thought about it as emergency supplies. And really putting it all together in one location that's easy to kind of grab and go is the key here. So we're going to kind of work through what building a kit would look like. All right, so the basics really, which a lot of people know of, you want water, food, radio, sanitation supplies, medical supplies, other various preparedness items, and then, of course, your important documents. So for water, what you want is 1 gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days. So you might want to take a pencil and paper and kind of figure out what that would mean. It does come out to quite a bit of water, which is why having those 1-gallon jugs is really great. Something to keep in mind, though, is that you want to keep those in a cool, dry place. You don't want them out in direct sunlight for a while because it can kind of affect the water inside if it is a plastic water bottle. For food, you want a 3-day supply of non-perishable food. And you also want to make sure that you have a manual can opener. So if you have a bunch of canned food, it's not going to do really any good if you can't actually get into the cans themselves. And we're going to go over water and food in a little more detail a little bit later to kind of get down to specifics. So for the radio, you can actually get little handheld radios at a lot of local grocery stores sometimes. Target usually has them, Walmart. Having one that's battery powered or hand crank is great in case, your electricity goes out and you can't just plug it into the wall. Also having a weather radio is kind of convenient. If it were a weather-related disaster and something comes as a follow-up, you'd want to be able to have one of those radios so that you get that notification early so you can prepare once more for whatever's coming your way. And then sanitation and hygiene, obviously, you're going to have to go at some point if you're stuck for longer than a couple hours. So having those supplies in place is going to be great. You're going to be so glad that you have them. And they can also be used for pets, so keep that in mind. And then medical, having a basic first aid kit is always a good thing to have in an emergency or otherwise. Dust masks are great in case it's something like a tornado that comes through or high winds. You want to be able to have a dust mask in case there's a lot of debris floating around in the air. And then the whistle is actually for one of those same scenarios. If something happens where there's structural damage around you and you can't get out or you're trapped or something fell on you, you want to have a whistle so that you can signal to others that you're trapped. And then these other items, something to keep in mind with flashlights especially, is that you should keep the batteries out of the flashlights because if those batteries get old and corroded while inside the flashlight, they could also ruin your flashlight, so now you don't have any way of seeing in the dark. Let's see here. Having an extra battery pack for your cell phone, another great thing to have in case electricity goes out and you can't charge your cell phone like you normally would. And then important documents, you want, copies of local maps, emergency contact sheets, birth certificates, insurance, any medical documentation that's important. All of that stuff will come in handy if for some reason something happens and you need to grab and go. Also, something to keep in mind with the documents is that having them in a weatherproof case would be important because you don't want things to get soaked in a flood or in rain, snow, so many different ways for that stuff to get damaged. So that was kind of the basic kit, and then these next couple slides are additional supplies maybe you want to consider if you want to go above and beyond. Having extra prescription medications and extra pairs of glasses, just in case something happens, extra cash, checks, basically so that you can get additional supplies if for some reason you can't get back into your home. Like I said, important family documents and having them in a waterproof container. Having a first aid book is great if you've never taken a first aid class. I highly recommend it. Usually the Red Cross provides them, sometimes your local fire department, EMS. And it's a great way to basically get a baseline understanding of what you can do in an emergency to help someone if they have, a cut, a wound, hit their head, all those things. And then also something important for Ohio, considering the weather changes that we have out here, maybe having extra blankets or sleeping bags in case something happens during the winter months. So some of the other additional supplies you could have, again, clothing that is weather related, and this is a reason why I usually recommend going through your emergency kit every 4 to 6 months. If you do that, then you can kind of change out the type of clothing and the type of materials that you have in your kit so that if it's in the summer that you're going through your kit, maybe you want to throw in some extra sunscreen, umbrellas, things to basically keep the heat off. And if you're going through in the winter time, you'll want to pack long sleeve shirts, long pants, maybe some long underwear, and definitely make sure that each person in your family has at least one warm coat. Other things to include might be some chlorine bleach, which can come in handy for sanitation purposes, a fire extinguisher, which I recommend having in every household anyway, matches in a waterproof container, feminine supplies, things that you can eat on and eat with. And then, of course, if you have children, you want something that's going to keep them entertained. especially if electricity goes out and they can't play with their phones, their iPads, and whatever other electronics they have. It's a great time to introduce books and get them reading or play puzzles or board games, cards. Let's see. And something also to keep in mind is that you should tailor your emergency kit to the people in your family and really the situation that you're in. So if you live near a river, you're probably more concerned about flooding than someone who lives on higher land. And if you live in an isolated area, you're probably more worried about getting help from those emergency responders than someone maybe who lives closer to the middle of the city. So keeping those things in mind will also help you kind of tailor your kit to the specific needs of you and your family. And that's really what this is about, is us kind of giving you a baseline for what stuff you can put in it, and then you guys going beyond that and including things that are specific to you and your family. All right, so basic first aid kit. If you don't want to gather all these materials, you can always go out and buy one. I would just make sure that they have at least these things in them, which most do. And another great thing to do when you're going through your emergency kit is making sure that you're checking expiration dates, because things do expire, and you want to make sure that you have things that are going to be of use to you in an emergency. And if your antibiotic towelettes are all dried up, they're really not going to be that much help to you. So really the first aid kit is important in case someone in your family or yourself gets hurt during the emergency itself, or maybe afterward, in the immediate aftermath of it. So knowing how to treat minor injuries can make a difference in an emergency. You, again, may want to consider taking a first aid class, but just having these basic items in a first aid kit could help you stop bleeding, prevent infection, at least for a while, and maybe assist in some decontamination. All right, so for those of you with little kids or babies, you may want to consider putting together another to-go bag specifically for them. I found this little one on a website called homesteadlady.com, and essentially it's an idea for a baby shower gift to give to someone, which is a little different, and I thought that was pretty neat. It's a lot of the same stuff, just tailored towards babies, so formula, bottles, powdered milk, any items you might need for breastfeeding, extra clothing, backup for spills, diapers, moist towelettes, diaper rash ointment, any regular medications they might be on, and then obviously the comfort aspect of it, so toys, blankets, stuffed animals. A lot of parents probably already have some sort of to-go bag they use when they take, their baby or babies out of the house to grandma's, to the doctor's, to the park, wherever. And this is essentially the same thing, but maybe with a little extra materials in it. And obviously you'd want to keep it for emergency use only. If you do decide to, use it as a day-to-day thing, that's great, but just make sure that you're always resupplying it with the things that you would need in an emergency. And remember that babies can be more vulnerable to weather, so making sure that they're warm in cold climates and a little bit more cooled off in hot climates. Just keep that all in mind when you're putting it together. All right, and then for those of you with pets, one thing to keep in mind with their food and water is that you want to make sure that they have a separate supply of water. So you may, when you're doing your calculations of how much water you'll actually need, want to count them as their own person. Also, don't forget waterproof containers for their flea and tick medication or regular medication they might be on. Having a backup ID tag, leash and harness, bowls, all of those materials would be important, because you want to make sure that you can keep your dog with you, or your cat, or your bird, or your, ferrets are illegal, any other type of pet that you may have. The important thing is that you want to make sure that you can keep them with you and keep them protected. And in emergency situations, you want to make sure that they're not going to go run away somewhere. I definitely recommend having copies of your vaccination documents, adoption papers, registration papers, and if possible, definitely get your pets chipped. If your pet does get away from you in an emergency, the only way they're going to get back to you is with a collar ID tag or a chip that basically connects them to you, so you want to make sure they have that. Again, sanitation, very important, making sure that you have a litter box or newspapers, paper towels, trash bags, all those supplies, and a picture of you and your pet together. And this can come in handy, again, if you and your pet get separated. This would definitely put you and your pet together and designate you as the owner. I recommend on the back of that picture writing down specific details about your pet, so the species, the gender, the size, color, and any distinguishing features they may have, so clipped ears, certain color patterns. I wouldn't include anything like responds to treats well, because I imagine most pets do respond to treats well. And then also having familiar items such as maybe their favorite toys or bedding or treats that they definitely do love. Having those also packed away in your emergency kit would be helpful. Now we're going to get into a little more detail on the food aspect. Following a disaster, there could be power outages that could last for several days. You'll want to have a good stock of canned food, dry mixes, and other staples that maybe don't require refrigeration or cooking or water or special preparation, because they'll be a lot easier to use. And then, again, be sure to include a manual can opener and any eating utensils. I recommend finding the middle ground between non-perishable healthy food and food that you and your family are actually going to eat. If you pack your emergency kit with canned spinach and your kids believe spinach is their mortal enemy, you may have another problem on your hands, in addition to the fact that you're already dealing with an emergency. So things I recommend, you can see them all on this list. You want to stay away from foods with a high sodium content, because they'll make you thirsty, and chances are you have a limited supply of water. I'd also avoid foods high in sugar and saturated fat, and that's also for day-to-day life. I'd recommend avoiding those foods. Things that you should have: nuts, dried, non-artificially sweetened fruit, peanut butter, canned veggies and fruits. Avoid the fruits that are canned with heavy syrup, and granolas packed with sugar, and fruit bars that are really candy bars. So those are the ones that have a high sugar content and are usually covered in chocolate, unfortunately. Yes, the ones that usually taste the best. But kind of on the other side of that, you also want to include some foods that are your guilty pleasure foods or your stress foods, your comfort foods, because you are going to be in a stressful situation if you're having to go into your emergency supplies kit. So having a few of those is not bad. Just make sure you do have some more substantive food that your family can rely on and that you can rely on to kind of keep you nourished and somewhat healthy during this event. And then we do have a little more on water. So like I said, 1 gallon of water per person per day for drinking, and then also sanitation reasons. If you are a nursing mother or you live with someone who's a nursing mother, they may need more water. Sick people generally take in more fluids. Also, if it's really hot, everyone is probably going to be drinking more water, so keeping that in mind. And then, again, a medical emergency, so if someone gets hurt, has a scrape, has a cut, or something more serious, you might need water to sanitize, to clean off tools, equipment, etc. So you're going to need even more water. And again, remember to include extra water for your pets. And know that the time of year it is kind of going to alter how much water you can have saved up. So if it's 88 out, and really humid, people are going to want to drink more water. So during the summer months, having more water on hand. And then during the winter, obviously, still having that 1 gallon of water per person per day, but maybe not having as much extra as you would have during the summer months. And sanitizing water. So if it comes down to you having to get water from a source that you don't necessarily know is clean, you're probably going to want to sanitize it or purify it in some way. You can use chlorine bleach, so if it's not scented, color-based, or those bleaches with added cleaners. I personally recommend going out to your local sporting goods store, grocery store, or a local shop and finding water purification tablets. They're really small. You usually have to use like 1 per gallon, and they're a little bit more effective and a little bit safer, I'd say, than the chlorine bleach if you've never tried to sanitize water with chlorine bleach before, especially if you don't have a dropper. Either way, the water is probably going to taste a little funny. That's generally just a rule of thumb. It doesn't taste great, but it will be a little bit more clean than it normally would. One thing, though, to keep in mind is that chlorine bleach and these water tablets aren't going to get rid of debris that's actually in the water, so having a way to filter the water, whether that's through pantyhose or really thin, clean sock, if in a true emergency, something like that might have to happen because, again, these things will kill the bacteria, hopefully, in the water, but they're not going to get rid of those big floaters, basically. If you are going to use bleach, using 16 drops of liquid bleach per gallon of water is how you would have to do it, and then you leave that for a while, and then you can drink it later. And then if you're going to be using it as a disinfectant, use 9 parts water to 1 part bleach. So it's quite a bit more bleach. So obviously, if you are going to be using it both as a disinfectant and for purifying your drinking water, having a way to separate those two sources is going to be important because you don't want people accidentally drinking chlorine water. It would taste awful and probably cause a lot of harmful side effects. All right, so next we're going to get into making a plan. So all these questions are really in place to kind of get you thinking about, how would you and your family react in a disaster, in an emergency? Something people don't think about is that in a true emergency, what if you cannot use your home phone or your cell phone, and the only way that you know where your family is based on, your own personal knowledge of their schedules? Well, that's great, but it also doesn't give you a way to communicate with them and tell them that we all need to meet here at this point in order to figure out what we're going to do next. So making a plan and having that plan in place before an emergency is really important. So communication. One thing everyone can do is go onto the Hamilton County OhioEMA.org website and sign up to receive emergency alerts and warnings. And this is from our Hamilton County Emergency Management Agency. And these alerts are great because, there's weather alerts, there's heat advisories. Essentially, it's the best way to stay up to date on any emergencies in your area. And if you can get everyone in your family to sign up, then at least if you don't know where they are, at least you know that they all got the same alert and know what's going on. And hopefully you have a plan in place to all meet somewhere so that they know once they get that alert, they all need to head, to this point in the community or this area in your neighborhood. Also, a lot of emergency sites such as the Red Cross, FEMA, and usually sometimes your local fire department or police department will also have alert systems that you can sign up for, whether it's through your phone number or through an email address. So always check out those websites and see what's available in your community. I always think in this case redundancy is better. Might as well get multiple alerts. So long as you get at least one, you're good. So collecting information is important so that you have a hard copy of what people's contact information actually is. So if you're the person in your family who has the contact information for every single family member, that's perfect, but what if your phone breaks or falls in the toilet and you can't get to those numbers and you have not memorized, the 15 people in your family's contact information? You'll want to have a hard copy somewhere that's in a waterproof container, hopefully, so that you can still have access to those numbers. And having this information on a hard copy will give you the peace of mind that no matter what happens to your mobile phone, you still have this important contact information at hand. Also, the numbers for your medical facilities, your doctors, your internet, gas, electric companies, they're all essential, especially if the internet goes out in your area, because if you can't get online to get those numbers, then you have no way of reporting to them that you're having an issue or that you need immediate service. So having that information on hand and accessible is really important. And if you put it all in one place, then you don't have to go searching for it, which is great. So this slide kind of goes over the various actions you can take in choosing a meeting place, depending on, what level you want to go for. So you could do, in your neighborhood, outside of your neighborhood, and outside of your town just to be safe. It wouldn't be a bad idea, especially for those of you that travel outside of your neighborhood or town or city quite often. And probably the key information here is the share information part. So it's great if you have a designated location, but if you're the only one that knows that, then it's really only helping you, and it's not going to help the other members of your family because they're going to have no idea where to go. So I think a good idea is to get everyone together one night, have a pizza night or a potluck, and just talk about these things and say, hey, if this happened in our area, or if this happened right now and you were, back at home, where's somewhere we could all meet, especially if, we couldn't call each other on our cell phones. Because I know a lot of you probably won't go home and say, all right, let's go practice our plan this weekend. But if you include it as part of other activities, whether that's birthday parties or family dinners, holidays, it kind of makes it a little more fun, a little more interesting, and you can usually get a little more buy-in from your family members. They maybe will roll their eyes a little bit less if you offer them food afterwards. And then again, if you have young children, ready.gov/kids is a great resource if you're looking for ways to kind of get them a little bit more involved. It'll kind of get their attention a little bit more. It is geared towards kids and their parents. And in the meantime, it can also get them a little more information. And who knows, maybe they'll be the person in your family that actually wants to be the front runner on this and kind of get things started and get you all prepared. Another thing that people sometimes forget is electronic records. So downloading and printing out those health records for all members of your family is important. If something happens in your area and you can't go to your normal provider, you want to have that information on hand. So if you do have to go to someone else, you can at least give them the background information they need to give you effective and proper treatment. You want the best treatment you can get, and if they can't access those electronic records themselves, you're going to need to be able to provide that information. So this is just an example of what that ready.gov/kids website looks like. Again, it's geared to kids and their parents. It's a great website. It's got a ton of activities, ideas for how you can get more people involved. I think it's a perfect activity to do on a rainy day or maybe when it's extra humid and hot outside during the day. You just sit them down for a while, take them through a couple things, and who knows, maybe they'll really love it. So definitely give it a shot, explore it a little bit. If you yourself don't have kids, you can always recommend it to someone you know who does, so that's kind of a nice thing to do. And again, pets, making sure they're ID'd is really critical. Again, it's the only way they're going to get back to you if they get lost. Also, having a list of shelters and shelter numbers for your local ones is going to be great. In case they do get away from you, you can always call the local shelter and see if they're there. And then if it's a situation where you can no longer stay in your home and you need to go to an emergency shelter, something to consider is that they don't always allow in animals that are not service animals. So having a list of local hotels or motels that are pet-friendly is pretty key. And again, making sure you have a leash and a harness for your animal in case he or she escapes, or so that he or she cannot escape. You want to keep your pets with you as best as you can. And then this slide kind of goes over all the various templates that ready.gov website has. So if you click on them, it'll take you to a separate website, and you can actually download the template to your home computer or tablet or laptop or whatever you have, and you can actually fill it in. So it kind of gives you a great starting place to go if you are interested in developing a plan for your family or yourself. It makes it a lot easier. And it makes it a lot easier if you're going through it with a large group, because you can just say, all right, guys, where's our meeting place going to be? What are we going to do in this situation? So I definitely recommend exploring those ones. And the final section. So I think that listening to this presentation is a great first step. From here, I would sign up for alerts through the Hamilton County Emergency Management Agency, the National Weather Service, and again, if possible, your local fire department or police department. And then while you're on the internet, you should hop on over to the local fire department or police department social media site, whether that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and follow them. A lot of times these departments post things on their social media pages, and it gets to people a lot faster than the local news. And I also might be a little bit biased, but I think you should follow the Hamilton County Public Health pages as well. If you want to be more involved in community preparedness activities, definitely go through your local administration, fire department, police department, or other community groups in your area. And if you don't have any of those, you can always join the Cincinnati Hamilton County Medical Reserve Corps unit. We cover all of Hamilton County and Cincinnati, and we're right in the beginning stages of kind of revamping our group and getting everyone more excited, more energized, and trying to push out more activities for everyone. So it's a pretty exciting time to join. I also might be a little biased because I'm the unit coordinator for that group. So if you have any questions on that, you can always ask me during this presentation. And then also you can explore the many, many disaster preparedness websites that are out there. Something that's pretty fun is this preparedness effort that was put forward by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and it's about zombie awareness. So if you do have kids, or even for adults, it's this whole comic they put up on their website, and it kind of goes through the importance of preparedness and makes it fun and entertaining. And it's a pretty quick read, but it is fun. And the way to find it is to Google search Zombie Preparedness CDC, and it should pop up right away. And then I kind of wanted to end things with a little piece on prevention. So really the best way for you and your family and your neighbors and your friends to be prepared for an emergency is to be healthy, to be active, to be involved. If you want to help out those people close to you in an emergency, you have to be healthy enough to do so. So making sure you've got good hygiene, you're eating well and exercising, going to routine medical checkups and getting those vaccinations are all key pieces of being a healthy individual. And actually, August is National Immunization Awareness Month. So if you want to check out any resources on the flu, there's a couple websites up there, and also a schedule for vaccines that are recommended from the CDC. And then these are a whole bunch of other resources I kind of laid out that are all preparedness, emergency, disaster response specific for various agencies and organizations. So feel free to explore those. They're great. You can find a ton of stuff online, and if you ever have any questions, you can always contact us here at Hamilton County Public Health. And there's my contact information if you have any questions after this or think of anything.
Great. Thank you, Jenny, so much for your presentation. So we'll open it up for any questions. I'm also going to share the download link for the presentation that Jenny just did. So that is now in the chat box, so you'll be able to click on that and actually download the presentation to save it to your own computer. So if you have any questions, now is your chance. If you are on the phone, you will most likely need to hit *6 to unmute yourself, and then talk, or you can use the chat box function on the left of the screen. So, any questions? Okay, so it doesn't sound like there are any questions. Jenny did that great of a job of her presentation and explaining it all. But if you do have other questions, you can email Jenny. You have her contact information, or you can reach out to your health educator, and we'll be happy to pass on the questions to Jenny or get you the resources. So again, now's your chance to download the presentation if you haven't already. We will be putting this webinar on the We Thrive YouTube channel, so look out for it then. If you'd like to share it with family or friends or coworkers, it will be up within the next week or so. So keep an eye out for it. And we are going to then end our presentation for the day. Thank you for joining us, and we will have more to come. Have a great day. Bye.